Hey, welcome everybody to the Ypsi Election 2020 special. I'm Alex Thomas. Who's that?
Desirae Simmons.
I'm here with Desirae Simmons. And just to start off from the jump, I'm super proud that we are contributors to What's Left. It's a great grassroots newspaper that I hope you check out and website. But for this telecast, the views that you're going to hear, they're expressly my own and Desirae Simmons. And they don't represent What's Left as a group. They definitely don't represent Riverside Arts Center as a group. Again, everything that you get here on this telecast is opinion and mine and Miss Simmons. So
I would say informed opinion.
Informed, studied. Gosh, the last few years. Hey, let's jump on in. What's the first race you want to talk about, Desirae?
Did you want to start with the Ypsi Township one?
Oh, heck yeah. What Desirae and I are going to do, we're going to try to quickly go through the ballot for Ypsi Township, and then talk about it, but I think people really want some guidance, and we're going to jump into that. Guidance if they respect our opinion, but you're watching, so I guess you probably do. For Ypsi Township, I'm elated, excited to endorse Cheryl Roberts for Ypsi Township Supervisor. It's a incredible opportunity to end this dynasty, and I'm into that. What about you, Desirae? Who do you want to do next?
Well, the city of Ypsilanti, we actually don't have any local primaries. I feel like it's kind of actually sad that we really can't, we don't have a lot of participation. And so we have the candidates that we have on council. Those are the candidates that we'll have for the next 2 years. So.
So nothing on the, because I have, and I was cruising down listening carefully to you just to make sure the next race in Ypsi Township that I wanted to go over. So, but there's nothing on the Ypsi City, or what's on the Ypsi City ballot? Is there any Ypsi City only issue? Or that's what you just said, okay. Well, I'll go quickly down for Ypsi Township, and while I'm going through that, if you want to stop me, because I want to talk. We're going to talk more about each of our endorsements for any office, but I just want to get these in real fast at the beginning. For county clerk, this is interesting. It was there's a backstory. We'll have a chance to talk about it. I'm in Monica Ross Williams as a write-in candidate. Please tell everyone it's really, really difficult as a write-in, as an independent. So you really need to tell anyone else that you think are inclined to support her or that care about Ypsi Township politics. You're gonna have to write in Monica Ross Williams for county clerk, for township, Ypsilanti Township clerk. Next, for treasurer, we just have Sam the Man Eldridge is the only one on the ballot. He is a former law enforcement officer, kind of stays undercover. I think I never see him. I've heard, he's at every board meeting if you attend, so I don't want to make it sound like he's absent at all. But I've heard reasonable things about him, and I have my reservations about a lot of former law enforcement people in politics, but I've heard positive things about Stan Eldridge. He's the only one on the ballot for the treasurer's race, so that's what people have to vote for. Trustee, for those that don't know, Ypsilanti Township, 55,000 population, 7.5 times larger than the city, is led by a 7-member board of trustees. It's a full-time supervisor position, full-time treasurer, and full-time clerk, and 4 trustees. All 4 trustees are up. There's 5 people running. I am pretty confident, and I'm endorsing strongly Jimmy Wilson Jr. for trustee. I don't have any other choice but to vote for, you do have a choice. I'm endorsing Jimmy Wilson Jr. for trustee, Gloria Peterson for trustee, Debbie Swanson for trustee, and also Michael Richardson. And the one I'm most enthusiastic about, equally, Jimmy Wilson Jr. and Michael Richardson Jr., not Jr., but Michael Richardson is a Detroit police officer that's on the board. And again, I said my reservations about former police officers, but he's an authentic community person, really brings a level of expertise to the Board of Trustees that we really need. So strong endorsement for Michael Richardson, Jimmy Wilson Jr., Gloria Peterson, and Debbie Swanson makes out the total. For Park Commissioner, we have 7 people running for 7 spots. The only person that I know of and that I'm excited about is Ms. Hodge. And I know her husband well, and I'm endorsing him in another race. But Taja Hodge, or I don't want to butcher her name, but please vote for Ms. Hodge for the Park and Recreation Board, Park Commissioners Board. That said, on township, I went through that rather quickly, and I think people are probably tired of hearing my voice. Desirae, what are your thoughts on anything I said, or where would you like to go next?
Yeah, I guess if we just want to work our way up and go through the county then. So do we want to start, so for county commissioner, again, for the city of Ypsilanti, it's easy because we actually don't have anybody running against our incumbent, Ricky Jefferson. So for county commissioner for the 6th district, we have Ricky Jefferson.
Oh, that's it. Well, because I'm really interested because I know you were paying attention to the District 5 race, which is the one covering Ypsi Township. And, what are your thoughts about that race before I give my endorsement? And I'm sure a lot of people are turning in, they don't even know the history behind or what. So if you could give some of those people. But
we're not going to give it to them yet. We're going to wait until we talk about it, right?
Okay. I
think this race is worth coming back for. I do. I was saying I think this race is worth coming back for. So, okay. Obviously, I don't get to vote in this race. I know 3 of the 4 candidates just in general.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, I was just gonna say,
I was talking up so much in the beginning, and you always have, but we'll give you. It's so important.
I was gonna fake vote.
Pardon? You gonna what?
I was just gonna fake vote.
Oh.
Even though I don't get a real vote.
Well, I'll say in that District 5 race, I am very excited to endorse, and I have endorsed in the past, and I strongly encourage people to vote for Justin Hodge. The seat now, the current holder, is held by a longtime incumbent. She hasn't been present. We haven't had a real opportunity for leadership in that seat. And to have a Justin Hodge, he's a school of public health professor. He's been working in the community for a number of years. He's active just on many levels, but a qualified, really informed professional. And what really sold me on him is, what got my interest was in his campaign announcement pre-COVID when he talked about health inequities. So he's been spot on. So Justin Hodge for the District 5 Commissioner's race.
And so if I were voting in that race, I, at this point, would probably actually be voting for Denise Kirchhoff. So we'll have a conversation on that one.
Absolutely. And that was a tough one.
It's tough, honestly. Like I said, I honestly think that many candidates can bring different things. So, but for the sake of today, that's where I am. So then we go from county. So then from county commissioner at the county level, we also have, let's see here. Do you want to do sheriff?
Oh, sure. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Sheriff.
I love you just putting me on the spot today, Alex.
Well, it's not the Alex Thomas show, it's the What's Left.
Now I need my own show just to compete. Okay. So yeah, so this is an interesting race. I mean, I don't know that much about Ken McGee. So this is the race between Jerry Clayton and Ken McGee. I don't know that much about Ken McGee. As part of preparing for this, I looked up, a couple of things, heard him speak on the show Coffee, No Cream, No Sugar, or No Sugar, No Cream. I might be messing up. Sorry, Miss Valerie, if I'm messing up the name of your show.
Mhm.
So I saw some of his interview on there, and I've read a little bit of some things. Uh, but I mean, I feel like if I had to vote right now, I probably would still vote for Jerry Clayton. But I also want to just say that I do think a lot of things that Kim McGee brings up, I think, are some valid questions. But I also, for me personally, I wouldn't count. One of the things he talks about is that he was, being a police officer, you know, on the streets, and for me personally, I don't actually take that as a big qualifier. I don't know that that
Mhm.
necessarily is going to make everything better, but I also did really appreciate some of the things that he said about how he would deal with in being in community. But
Mhm. It's yeah, it was giving my views on law enforcement, the state of mass incarceration, just our criminal and justice system. It's such a deliberative process, that vote for law enforcement. Or so I've definitely, not definitely. I'm If the election were today, I'd be voting for Sheriff Jerry Clayton, and it's based on I think my issue is just with our traditional American law enforcement. Within that, you could do a lot worse with than Sheriff Jerry Clayton, and the issue is, there's incredible disparities within our jail system, arrest records, the way the laws enforced within our county in relation to particular areas. So those are those issues and how they play out locally. But I think, and I know our sheriff's department does some great work on the community side. Um, Kathy Wyatt, Derek Jackson in the community and trying to connect people and things. And I applaud them for that work and want to work more with them in the community side. What makes it so tough was that those issues I mentioned before, how it plays out. And also, I think there's just a lot of law enforcement overreach into politics in the county. I told someone that I felt like the sheriff and Greg Dill, the county administrator, are like in tandem, a county executive, a de facto county executive. And I just think that more thoughtful people around the county, more of that civic and politically engaged crowd need to really look at just law enforcement and its influence on politics locally. It needs to inform, not direct the discussion, I think. So having said that, I'm definitely pull back. I pull back from saying definitely is because I do intend to talk more with his opponent, Ken McGee. And I've seen some of the things that he's brought to front as far as the sheriff being the CEO of a company and having contracts with the state. But what really caught my interest and made me want to talk to Ken McGee was hearing his comments about the opiate crisis and and reading the MLive article. If you Google Ken Ken McGee Magee, the person running against the sheriff, and in the MLive article he talks about, and from what I look at it, a harm reduction strategy for opiates. Talking about slashing administrative salaries at the sheriff's department, and he's a 20-year or longer law enforcement official, so he's credible. So that's the reason I'm hesitating when I say definitely, because I want to listen and have a good chat with him and explore those issues further. But sure, it's off. Voting for Jerry. Pardon me?
I was just gonna say, I mean, I don't know. I didn't, like I said, I've only done, but one of the things he said, and I wouldn't say that this is something that Sheriff Clayton doesn't also say, but pointing out how we have the highest recidivism rate, in the state here in Washtenaw County, and why is that, and what are we doing to actually change that, right? And so that to me, those things are to me like the big questions that we need to be figuring out.
Yeah, and I bet a lot of that recidivism is coming from a lot of areas that are over patrolled in terms of proactive stops, not when people even call, but just because there's a high police presence. And so, but that's a longer discussion another time. It's just,
Okay, I'm gonna move us to the next race. We're supposed to be doing this quickly, Alex, and then come back to conversation.
Okay.
All right, so we have what do you want to do next? I've been choosing all of them so far. So we're at
Oh, no,
county.
let's quickly choose something.
All right, we could go to county prosecutor.
Woo! You
This
should
one,
better, you better.
we're just gonna talk about this one probably a lot because I think, I mean, this is
Eli Savage, go Eli. Ellie Savage. The
you
correct one
guys
is-
have it. Yep.
yeah.
So okay, so we'll come back to that. I think that race is a big race anyhow to break down, and we have definitely some information too to share for that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Where else do we have at the county? We have clerk and register of deeds.
Yes, and I wish I had more information. I wouldn't take my word for it. I'm probably gonna vote. I can't even pronounce his name. I didn't have enough time to research, but I don't want to butcher. Is it Kester Baum or the correct? That's what. But I want to do more research, and so there could be two great other candidates there. I didn't have enough time. So what about? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be voting for Larry Kestenbaum as well. So, all right, then we have we have Water Resources Commissioner. But that's also not a race. So we have Evan Pratt there. I'm just making sure going down the ballot. Also have treasurer, and again, there's one candidate. So we have Catherine McClary.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all? Is that all our county? That's our county, and then we go to state.
Actually, we have a very important judicial race.
Oh yes. Well, I was going to come back to nonpartisan, but yeah, that's fine. Let's go to the judicial race. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Do you have it there? And I know.
Yeah, so this is the Circuit Court, 22nd Circuit. So this is Tracy Vandenberg.
Yes.
And Nick Rumel.
Yeah, very excited to vote for Tracy Vandenberg. We'll tell you her great things about Nick Rumel. A lot of my close friends, people I respect, are endorsing him. I really feel bad and get a chance to talk with him more, but I was just really impressed with Tracy Vandenberg, and she definitely has my vote.
Yes, and I'll be voting for Nick Rumel. So we'll have another conversation on this one where we are. Okay, so then now we go to state. So we have our state reps. So I only have Ronnie Peterson. So
yep. Oh, Ronnie's in. I'll be voting for Ronnie.
I guess I should be more fair to actually to be, I mean, obviously for primaries, you have to vote either in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party section. You can't cross over, or otherwise that spoils your ballot. And so, but to be fair, I should say that there are other candidates, and the one like Ronnie is running against. Well, they're not running against each other, but there will be another candidate in November for him to face, but just for the Democratic primary. I just want to be clear that I'm talking about the Democratic primary candidates.
Great. I think that's a good point to put out. That's the right point. People appreciate it. Our viewers appreciate it.
Are we in the same district then? We're both in the 54th?
Yes.
All right. So then we go on to Congress, 12th district. We have Debbie Dingle, Solomon Rajput.
Ooh. You go first.
I see how you doing me today, Alex. Okay. Well, I will say this race is actually another run that's really hard. I also realized, I'll say this when we come back after we finish doing this, that we didn't really talk about all of our different affiliations, or I didn't really name all of mine.
Oh.
And I probably, some of them you'll understand are part of what will sway some of my votes as well. But yeah, this one's really tough for me because, obviously I'm on the Democratic Party, Michigan Democratic Party Progressive Caucus. and I'm the vice chair of the caucus now. And we didn't actually endorse anybody in this race, even though we have Solomon Rajput, who is running clearly as a progressive candidate. And so it might be surprising to folks to hear that I'm actually going to be going with Debbie Dingell for this race. I look forward to talking about why, but this is a hard one for me ideologically, I think, because I want to be clear that I just want to say, you know, I was telling my husband about this, because he's like, but Desirae, you talk so much about how you want to see someone run against Debbie Dingell. You want to see her out of there. And you know, for me, it's not so much about that. It's mainly, I do agree that as a county that we really deserve a really progressive candidate. And she's not as progressive on all the issues as I would like her to be. But here we are.
Yeah, well, you know, we're going to come back to tell you, we're going to have to come back because I'm not sure. Prior to this coming on, I was thinking Debbie Dingell, like pretty sure that I was going to vote for Debbie Dingell. But then being here on air live and talking about, there's like a voice, like, oh, can you do Solomon that way? You know, I had him on my show and I was very enthusiastic and back there. So I was really like, if under the gun right now, it's like, you can't, you got to vote for Solomon. But I can't, I'm undecided. And so maybe hearing from you, maybe why, reasons behind, and I can go full force. But I mean, I love Solomon's agenda. I love the enthusiasm in the beginning of the campaign. You know, but I just heard, you know, so many people pull back, and it just causes concern. Debbie Dingell is such an establishment. I mentioned dynasties and how I don't like them, you know, and you know, her husband's seat, his dad before. So it's just difficult. So yeah, maybe you can make me, and I like to be Mr. Decisive, but it's hard. I'm going back and forth. So yeah, I'll say something before the end.
To be fair, I mean, I some other folks did vote for him because of me talking about him. So, you know, there's that too. And then
you know, the inclination to vote for Dingell might be for the wrong reasons for myself. You know, I look at her just position and the length of that, and the strength of the representation our area would have. Is that the right reason to vote for someone? That's all, you know. So I don't, yeah, but I'll let you move us on or whatever you want to.
No, then the next one we have is state senator. So we have Gary Peters, and yeah, so we don't have, you know, that's who we have.
Yeah. Absolutely, I'm voting for Gary Peters. I say absolutely because that's our the only option for on the Democratic side. I wish I could be more enthusiastic, and you know, it's just so it's hard to get solid information. I don't have like a strong mental picture, or I'm super educated on this track record, or I don't hear about him a lot. But I'm voting for Gary Peters.
All right, that's everyone, I think.
Did you make? You said you were voting. Pardon me. Did you give your choice for that?
I mean, there's only Gary Peters.
Well, no,
I'm gonna write myself in. Maybe that'll be interesting. I'll just start writing myself in when I'm not.
All right. I can't wait. We're gonna disagree on something later on here. Gonna get some good ratings. You're messing with me.
It looks like, I mean, so it looks like there, you know, the races to go back to. I mean, I think there's some that we could talk about just like for information's sake, even though we agree. But it looks like the County 5 district or county commissioner, to come back to county prosecutor, to talk about the candidates and different things, and the circuit judge race. So which one do you want to do first? You're going to decide.
We're going to talk about the prosecutor's race. You know, and you know, I don't think I did that full disclaimer about candidates that I was associated with. strongly associated in supporting Cheryl Roberts. Big supporter of Eli from the beginning and vocal. I'm not officially a part of his campaign, but Eli, Tracy, this big supporter, Cheryl. Yeah, I think that's if anyone else comes to mind that I've been really speaking to and working a lot with, then I'll throw out. Super excited about Ellie Sabat because I was part of some people that well, I'll tell you, I saw on Samantha Bee a couple years ago, I heard about Larry Krasner, progressive prosecutor in Philadelphia. And he had sued the Philadelphia Police Department 75 times. Larry Krasner was a civil rights attorney. He didn't have any history in law enforcement. But Larry Krasner in Philadelphia was recruited by advocates that wanted some change in criminal justice in Philadelphia, and he got it and he won. They recruited him and he won. So right around the Nugent prosecution, Brian Mackey had brought charges against a candidate that many thought were just really specious, bogus, ridiculous. But there was a big movement around, and it just out of that there was a group of us. We wanted to find a candidate to run on a progressive agenda, and that progressive agenda would be, ending overcharging, ending cash bail, treating people as people instead of, cogs in the system. Seriously addressing mental health, juveniles, and substance use disorder as the issues they are. Ellie Sabat came up and with his great resume, just super excited. Can't wait to vote for him. I think one of the most, if not the most consequential race on the ballot for Ypsi Township, my area, my neighborhood.
Yeah, so I guess so for my disclaimers, it's always hard. I'm sure that there'll be more that might come up. So a couple of things that are relevant. I mean, so to this conversation is I'm a part of Liberate, Don't Incarcerate, and so that's going to clearly lead, in terms of where I am on this race. I also, as I said, I'm also a vice chair for the Progressive Caucus for the state and the vice chair for the Black Caucus for the county. Yes, and probably lots of other things too. But so I'll just say, for Liberate, Don't Incarcerate, and some of the other reasons for the county prosecutor, I just want to say too, this race was, when it first was starting out, when it first started, Ellie was the only candidate, and when he first started, it was to run against Mackey, right? And so, there was a really clear choice. But because of some of these different groups, I had heard about the fact that there was going to be an African American woman running in this race, and so even though I met with Ellie pretty early on, I told him that I was actually not going to. I was going to hold off on an endorsement until I got to know who this other candidate was. Even though I didn't know who she was at that point, I didn't even know, her name. And so, anyway, so it did take me a little bit. And then also, I just want.
Desirae, you froze on my screen. I don't know if you did for the audience. Okay. Well, I'll assume that people always hit it to me. Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things that when we started with Liberate, Don't Incarcerate, because we were starting to do that work, and that came together and was saying, we want to run an abolitionist campaign alongside the county prosecutor race. So I was like, what I'm going to do? I'm going to let that process work. We'll see what happens. Liberate, Don't Incarcerate was going to put out a scorecard. We'll see what happens with that. And then also was co-hosting a youth forum for the candidates. And I was, wanting to really connect with the youth voice. And so I decided I was going to hold off until after those things happen to make my decisions. And they all still lead very clearly. I want to just kind of show up here the Liberate, Don't Incarcerate scorecard, and you can see these different areas. If you go to liberateDon'tIncarcerate.org, you can see the information and all the information of how we even came up with the scorecard. But just down the list of these areas of, for our platform, we have stop targeting Black and Brown and Indigenous and immigrant communities, ensure transparency and accountability, decriminalize mental health and poverty, treat kids with dignity and compassion, stop the machine and divest from the machine and invest in community. So across all those areas, one candidate, as he said in his most recent mailer, gets an A grade.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a little bit again, but I think we're, I still consider myself a part of LDI, and I put that out there from you guys for a couple months. All the things here in my neighborhood, but yeah, definitely proud of my affiliation with LDI. And I think that score incredible, and it's an awesome tool. And I think progressives in area, other future candidates should really look at that note and try to use it in the future. Candidate involved. With a lot behind that endorsement, I gave that before, but when his opponent, Ariana Slade, came on the scene, I was immediately dismissive because of her past prosecutorial experience. And that comes from, from growing up here, and, I'm 50 years old now. Between the ages of 16 and 24, I was repeatedly stopped and profiled, and no recognition of Fourth Amendment rights. And nobody cared back then. That's just the way it goes. And fortunately, we had cameras and there was an evolution. But, you and I mean, none of this is new. There's always been these incredible racial disparities. Black people have been disproportionately part of the criminal justice system in the county. You mentioned in Liberate, Don't Incarcerate, that treating kids as kids. One stat through the health department that I came across in Washtenaw County, youth between 10 and 16, Black youth are 6 times more likely to be arrested between 10 and 16 years old. 6 times, and we're not that big of a county, so we have a law enforcement presence in some concentrated areas, and our mass incarceration system is alive and well. And so I dismissed her because of that prosecutorial experience and the way that it seems like just the community, and too much of the community. I'm really disappointed with some of her supporters. They don't look at the facts. And I say some of her supporters, because there's a lot of thoughtful people that they thought about it, and I respect their decision. But there's a lot that haven't, and they're really dismissive of new information, and don't realize what an effect those disparities and just the law enforcement culture has on vulnerable populations, and particularly Black people.
Well, I know I went to, because I'm always questioning, right? Even in this race, I'm saying, oh, I'm voting for Eli, but at the same time, right, for me, I'm kind of like, this is just like a holdover until we don't have to have a prosecutor, right? So I will say too, one of the questions that people have, and something that I hear from Ariane's supporters, and that, is about her experience. And so I'll say a couple of things to that. One is I asked at a recent event, I asked Eli about that specifically, about, the fact that he doesn't have that experience, and, what would he say in his experiences would make him more actually, a better candidate for this position, even based on that. And, he had a really good answer, I would say, which first is, to say that being like the kind of experience he has representing people on the other side, and really understanding what it means for a person to be charged and sentenced in these different ways, and seeing that impact in the community. He talked about being in schools and how that helps to understand really the school to prison.
Lost your sound for a little bit. I'm wondering if the audience has lost too. Oh, there you're back.
So work, and that's the work that he does in Detroit, very much mirrors a lot of that kind of work. And that to me, that reminds me of, early on when I lived in Ypsilanti when Desirae Graham ran against Mackey. And that was something that I really learned in that process when he really uplifted how much of a managerial role the prosecutor plays. And so anyway, so even from a lot of those places, I see that the question is not about one person being more experienced than another. It's about what experience matters. And how do you value different kinds of experience?
People will say and I'm a proud abolitionist. I want to get rid of the mass incarceration system, but it's like they'll just be dismissive of the idea without taking a step and reading some of the literature and understanding that the abolishment movement, it's about getting rid of the systems that make mass incarceration possible. I mean, we're understanding that, it's not going to happen overnight. There's a process. It has to start somewhere. I mean, it's just it's a horrible system that we have. And to the experience, the reason I had that reaction, traditional prosecutors, they're working within a system right now that created this mess that we have. And it's unfair and racist and structurally flawed. A couple of examples, talking with a public defender, it's not unusual for them to have a ongoing caseload of 2,000 or 3,000 people. From the new cases that they're getting each day to the backlog, it's impossible to provide an adequate defense. And that's what the position that public defenders are put in. So a great majority of the people that come to the prosecutor's office are people that can't afford and therefore don't get their constitutionally entitled to defense, that vigorous defense. So that's wrong. That's morally wrong. And it's the most poor, and it's the poorest people, the most vulnerable. And structurally, the prosecutor's office getting twice as much funding as the public defender's office. They'll say that we got to prosecute every case, but I don't understand, when you're flying through cases in maybe literally less than a minute, that's not a great expense. And what that does is prosecution is focused on the people that don't have a defense, that can't afford. A prosecutor is less likely to go after someone or to prosecute as aggressively that can afford a vigorous defense. So, it's better to be rich and guilty than innocent and poor in our system. So I can't wait to vote for Ali Saleh.
Yeah. And I also think the other thing I'll say too is folks talk a lot about having to go in and be a leader among prosecutors, and what does it seem like to, being a person that has so much support in that space. I'm just going to pull up actually an article that will be published on What's Left soon, actually an article by Ruth Cassidy that looked at the early contributions from and really breaking down where the contributions were coming from. And so Ruth, along with other folks, really looked at some data to look at people who were donating, who were in a prosecutor household, current or former, law enforcement household, current.
Do you know in that? Does it show who the biggest contributor for Ariana Slay is in Michigan?
So so according to this here, let me just get down here. So this was based. I want to say that this is based on the first. So they just another some more records just dropped in July, but this was based on the first reporting. And so I could go through, let's see here, Arian Slay. So her top donors um, include her father, who is a retired police officer.
California, does it say
I'm
that?
sorry?
In California, right? And so not in Michigan.
In Indiana, I think. But
Indiana,
yeah, not
okay.
in Michigan. Her step parent, and then next is Brian Mackey.
The current prosecutor?
Yeah, I know, you're so surprised. It actually says, I just want to say that, so according to this this breakdown, approximately 20% of Aryan slaves' contributions were from prosecutor households, with 19% of those coming from those who currently work in the prosecutor's office. 34% came from law enforcement households, with around half or 52% of those funds being donated by her father. And then 6% of her contributions come from criminal defense attorneys. Whereas, let's see, for Hugo Mack, he had 0%. And then he received no contributions from folks in those areas. And about 2% of Eli's contributions came from prosecutor households, zero of those from the current Washtenaw County prosecutor household. And 2 of those contributions came from households with former ties to the prosecutor's office, with Judge Tim Connors and his spouse, Assistant Prosecutor Margaret Connors, contributing $575 respectfully. And then close to 0% of his contributions from law enforcement, with $100 donated by an administrator for the Detroit Police Department, and about 5% from criminal defense attorneys.
You know, I always tell people that, Brian Mackey's our largest contributor in Michigan, and then I get some pushback. Some people say it's not relevant. I think it's extremely relevant. Like watching the very first debate, I think Nate Frazier did with all of the candidates. And she spoke of Brian Mackey as her mentor and used the name Brian. And then later on, throughout the debate process, it seemed like there was more of a distancing from him. And then at the third debate, she started off by saying that the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office is a complete failure or total failure. That was like her first statement. And I just think it's a bit disingenuous when your largest supporter in the state is the steward of that failure and not being honest and open about the relationship. And I know they walked into the clerk's office to file. So that's why I put that out there, because, I mean, as we did this disclaimer, I'm proud of the people that I'm supporting. I'm proud of the associations that I have, and I don't need to hide them.
I just want to make one more point, because I do want to move us along, but I see that there's a question, or a direct question about that says, what would you say to non-Black progressive leaders who insist that supporting a Black woman candidate should be everyone's priority? And this is why this is so hard for me, honestly, because I support Black women, but overall, I support Black people and what's best for the Black community. And I'm really looking at what are the policies that we need to be focusing on that's going to move us there, and quickly. I have this sense of urgency. I mean, I've had it already, but this next decade is going to be huge for us, just in terms of what we're facing with climate change. I just feel like that's always over my head at this point. And so we have a lot of work to do if we're going to have a chance to survive as humanity, and to do so without divulging into just complete violence. And so for me, it's about what do we need to do to move quickly, and how do we make sure that things line up in the time that we have. And so that's for me what is leading this, is that I believe representation, racial representation, economic representation, all these different things are so important. Ideological representation is also important, and having And having folks in places that are bringing different values into spaces, I think, is important as well. And so this is a case where, you know, where I just, where even though Eli is a white man, and I also look at other people who are supporting him in the community, and recognizing how much support he has from the Black community. And it's partially because he's been in the community before he was running, right? And so people know him. And so people trust him just as a person who's a servant in the community. And that matters. I think that matters, right? And so for me, that kind of goes above and beyond just pure representation. And thankfully, you know, across some of these different races, we do have some good representation, or some good options for some racial representation in different ways. So I don't think this is going to stop that train overall.
I just wanted to make sure I could put it on my, because I wanted to make sure I read the question. What would you say to non-Black progressive leaders who insist that supporting a Black woman candidate should be everyone's priority? Respectfully, I'd say be quiet. You know, I think that everyone's priority should be, you know, vote who do you think best represents your interests. And the issue of race and the prosecutors, when you're going to look at it, I wouldn't look at I'd look who's most affected by what goes on in that office. You know, Ariana Slay's a prosecutor, a person of color, that's a prosecutor, but the people that go through that office, the most vulnerable in our community that don't have representation, that get targeted and disproportionately go through that system, they get financially burdened by an exploitive system. Substance use disorder is not really addressed as a health issue. Juveniles are treated as adults and their families are financially burdened and severely impacted. Mental health consumers, we don't have a real mental health court. It's not for felonies when those big issues come up. You know, so I think it's there's a bit of that soft bigotry of low expectations. You know, just picking someone for the color of their skin and saying that's enough as far as representation on these serious issues. You have to look at a person's policies and platform and not just the color of their skin and say, we need to support these. Ariana Slay's not Clarence Thomas, but he was Black, and look what he's, you know, that's ridiculous. It's
like with everything we're talking about stuff. It's like in the 90s, it was just like get different faces in spaces, right? But yeah. You know, we're far past that. I'm going to use this actually to bridge us into the circuit court, the judges, because I want to make sure we get to these races. But obviously, there's a connection here. You know I'm looking at a lot of data. It's kind of depressing, to be honest, of what's going on when thinking about the prosecutor, the judge, and the judges. This is also a really important race, too, in terms of, you know, judges are also the ones like putting those sentences. And, you know, here in Washtenaw County, I know that you talk about like health disparities and everything, but you know, it's like these are people's, this is lives. And if you're already in a situation where you have a lower life expectancy, each year matters, right? And so, you know, I want to just start off. So one of the early reasons I discounted Amy Reiser is because she's currently an assistant prosecutor in that office. And so to me, the relationship between the prosecutors and the judges is a questionable one that we should be looking at and understanding. And so I was like, nah, I'm not even going to look there. So for me, what we have to understand for this race is that even though on our ballots, we're only voting for one candidate, two of those candidates we will see in November. And so for me, the two candidates that you and I have shown support for are the ones I hope to go on into November. And then I look forward to learning more about the candidates and making my final decision of who I'll vote for in November.
And, you know, that particular judicial race, it's family law also. So they'll be charged with deciding custody and if a parent and child will be separated. And so those issues are just so important. I'm scared to have someone like Amy Reiser there. I wasn't even going to say her name, but a former prosecutor. And talking to people in the legal field, I can't point to any specific things, but they use adjectives like scary and done some bad things. Google you if you're open to just in my opinion, I guess if you're watching, you're interested in mine. I fear to have someone like that on the bench, especially charged with custody and children and things. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited about Tracy Vandenberg, because she has a strong social work background, and just from talking to her and as a resource for information and trying to negotiate all these complex issues, she's just been incredibly valuable. So you have the knowledge, and I know she cares. But I'd love to hear again about Nick too, because I want to be fair.
Mm-hmm. So I would say the thing for me that's the determining factor at this point, so I watched some of the forums with them, so kind of hearing them speak, read all of their answers that MLife published from Vote 411, watched the videos that they submitted to Ypsi Can I Share for the talking ballot. Because I was like, who am I going to vote for? I think this race is kind of hard for folks. But for me, what it comes down to is Nick Rumel. So as we're talking about the injustice and inequity, he's the only candidate that is putting up front racial justice and really saying, this is something we have to look at. He's the only candidate that's talking about transparency and data and sharing that data publicly. And those things matter because a lot of things that happen in the courts are invisible. A lot of people see the courts as like, this is where the justice can happen. The courts are the last stop. So for me, when I hear judges and they talk about just being impartial and by the time that somebody has gotten to you, they've already gone through how many levels of injustice to get to you. And if people don't recognize all of that and don't have an understanding about that, then your judgments are not going to come from a space that has that understanding. I want people to have that. And I think that because of the issues that we have, even here, people are like Washtenaw County, in Washtenaw County, and we should be really looking at this and actually kind of ashamed that we hold on to this idea that we're so progressive, given what our justice system looks like and who's being charged, what they're being charged with, how much they're being charged for, how much time that we're taking away from their lives, how that impacts the communities, how we're returning people back to the communities, how many times they're going back through our system. It is a problem. And it's a problem from the, and it's a problem in terms of, what are the judges actually doing in that space? And Nick Rumel talks about being a different kind of judge that's coming down from the bench, sitting next to people and working things out. And one of the things I'll say, when I'm one of the young people that submitted a question, this was actually for the prosecutor forum, but it still sticks with me and that be relevant for the judge race. When they're talking about like, who are you going to help me actually go through this process? Are you going to be actually looking out for me as well? And so seeing that from a judge kind of talking about working side by side with folks, it means something to me.
Yeah, I think we would definitely, the people of Washtenaw will definitely have a great choice. If it's Tracy and Nick, we can't go wrong in November. So,
you want to move on to another race already?
No, yeah, you did a great job playing host. Go ahead. It was a little low.
We want to move on. We could go. I mean, like, we can move on. See if people want to go back to that. We also have people wanted us to talk more about the county commission seat. Kirchhoff.
Well, I'll go. I'm definitely excited, and I saw why about Justin Hodge. You mentioned Denise Kirchhoff. That was really, really difficult for me because I think she's just the ideal kind of candidate that we need more of. Again, I'm voting for Justin, but she has that past social work experience, and she's really been involved in that community, educated me about some things down in Augusta Township. And I hope she has a great political career, and regardless of what happens this August, I hope she stays around and impacts things around. Heard Justin, I think are great people. I really have a low opinion of Michael White from someone that worked with him. And I don't say that, I don't like to say negative things about people unnecessarily, but I just think it's dangerous. That's an example. Oh, to that question about earlier about voting for people, non people of color, saying you should vote for the African American candidate. I mean, that's what I see as dangerous from someone that worked with Michael White. I didn't see a super depth and concern about these issues. I saw a person that gives a lot of rhetoric and speaks to, but didn't see a big presence in the community. And then he's been endorsed by that 30-year incumbent, Brenda Stumbo, and doesn't have an honest shot at running. So to me, he looks foolish. So that's, I'd love to get that discussion out there if anybody wanted to approach me and talk to about that, because I just think that's really dangerous when we have those establishment politicians picking, people in the community to support just because they're going to, uphold their the issues that they want or vote their way or support them. So and then the other candidate, Karen Lovejoy Rowe, which it surprises a lot of people when I say that I like her. To me, she's Ypsi Township. She's been around for so long. She's, if you talk to people around, they've had really nice interactions. From working in this community prior to do this, it was very rare that you heard people say anything negative about her. So, I think people know the story. She's a longtime incumbent, was the current Ypsi Township clerk, had up until the filing day filed to run again as clerk, but then on the filing deadline day, her daughter-in-law, who was already on the board of trustees, switched from running for trustee to file for clerk, and then clerk switched out of the township clerk's race and filed for District 5 seat, and because of her long career, made the automatic favorite. It'll be interesting to see if that still holds true because of so much discussion around that. I wrote about it as soon as it happened that I think I said two very nice women did something not very nice for transparency in government. I think that's a huge issue and a big one, and it's just something that's been typical of township politics. At least the appearance of backroom deals and blatant just switches on the deadline day. And then also in this time right now, with the focus on equity and COVID, just these really crucial issues, and it seems like we're in a type of evolution. We had three African American candidates that she blocked by jumping in with that. And that doesn't speak well for diversity and accurate representation on the Board of Commissioners for the county. So I really hope Justin Hodges wins, and I hope to see more of Denise in future elections. And I'd hate to see just name recognition help Karen win, despite thinking that she's a nice person.
Yeah, for me, I would say, I'm about putting people in places that I know are going to get things done, and I think are going to get things done. And I also feel like we need louder people in politics. Like we need people who are going to when something's going on, they're going to get out. They're going to be like, hey y'all, look, something's happening. That's what I need in my politicians. I don't think we have enough of that. And I feel like Denise will bring that because I see it. I've seen her in spaces. She's never the quiet one, waiting to be asked permission, sitting back, holding back. She's gonna be vocal. And so for me, that's what pushes it over for my, just like I said, personally, is that I think we need more people who are gonna be like that and who are gonna take that kind of experience. I know she talked about issues that I think are important, like broadband. I know that's not, but especially when COVID hit and knowing how hard it is to get information to people and lack of access around the county, and so I think that those things are important, and I want somebody who's in that seat who's going to be driving dollars into the community from the county, and who's going to be bringing the attention that we need on this side of the county. So that's and she also talked about the slow response to COVID-19. And I think that that's important, right? And so I also, like I said, like I don't want to, I think that there's multiple candidates that I think are good and would do good work, and that I like personally. But if I'm choosing right now, that's where I am for that race. Do you have anything else to say about that race before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, a little. I don't think there's two decent candidates, well, better than decent. Great, Justin and Denise, great. Justin and Denise, both great people. I'm endorsing Justin. You're endorsing Denise. Reasonable choices. I want to talk. I hope I don't upset Justin by talking about Denise too much. But something that she brought to my attention. I always go on about Ypsi Township, 55,000 people, 7 times larger. Denise is in Augusta Township, and like Ypsi Township at one time, Ypsi Township, its law enforcement is the Washington County Sheriff. That incident in Apple Ridge where a deputy had beat that woman was in Ypsilanti Township. Ypsilanti Township has a contract to provide law with the Sheriff's Department for the sheriff to provide law enforcement to Ypsi Township. It's at a cost, not salary, but at a cost of $160,000 per deputy. That discussion about reallocating resources from law enforcement to community groups that are really addressing mental health, juveniles, and substance use disorder, that'll be held on the Board of Trustees, and that's how that will play out. So it's really important. We don't have people that seriously think about Ypsilanti Township politics, or that think of enough of a community in that decision-making circle that really get engaged where these equity issues play out in Ypsi Township. Say all that because Augusta Township, I think around 7,000 people, really bad health inequities and disparities. They don't have a tax base. They used to have their own police department. They don't anymore. They used to be able to have a contract with the sheriff's department. They don't anymore. Their only police coverage is state police. And that's what Denise enlightened me to, that you have some domestic violence calls that aren't responded to in a timely manner, or if at all, child abuse. So there's some real problems down there. And if we have a serious discussion about equity in Washington County, we have to recognize these outlying townships, get real information, let those numbers inform the discussion, and not just what's going on in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
The township needs some help. If Augusta Township together.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important.
Yes.
You want to move on?
Yes, we can.
So,
if you would.
So then people want to talk about the township clerk race, Heather Gerald Rowe and Monica Ross Williams.
I talked for a while there because I got stuff to say, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Given though that you are an outsider out of Ypsi Township, dishing in, but excuse me, a valuable voice. So I'm interested.
Yeah, so this is interesting, as you're saying, like kind of just like an outside in and like looking again. I don't know Heather Gerald Rowe at all. I do know Monica Ross Williams. So relationships matter. And so it doesn't mean that everything's always right, but the relationships do matter, right? And so that's one thing I'll say. The other thing is, for me as a person that really values the practice and, promise of like building democracy, and what are more democratic practices that I think we should be moving toward. Oh, did I get cut out? Oh, yeah. So, what are practices for us to be building toward? I think that we need to have better processes and situations where, even though I recognize people are like, oh, this is just normal politics, right? This is just everyday politics, where people choose their successors, or, do different things so people run uncontested in races where people, because incumbents almost always win, it's a big barrier for new folks to run, even because it's a lot of, I mean, as a person who has run, it's a lot of time, effort, energy, trying to raise money for things. It's just like, um, so, so I'll just say that, like, like, so to me, when this first happened, I mean, my anger about the situation overall was about both. It was like, how is this happening where we're now putting someone in just so that they can be in that space. And then obviously the other part, which was then now moving where the county commissioner went from was going to have like a black commissioner coming, which was really exciting, to now being like, oh, maybe not, right? And so so I would say that the whole thing just made me angry just from the optics of it. I'm not talking about legality, but you know what? Like for me, the law is written by people and it's racist a lot most. So I mean, just because something's legal doesn't like make it work for me. But so yeah, I mean that's the thing. But I also and so I understand why Monica might have left the other race that which was due to some paperwork issues, and to see that, and her feeling that the clerk needs some more attention so that other candidates aren't in that position.
Some of that, well, the township clerk's office is kind of like in the prosecutor's debate. What I was amazed is, in the prosecutor's debate, how no one's talking about what goes on in the prosecutor's office with the defendants and in the jail. They're talking about the individual candidates. I haven't heard a lot of discussion about what the township clerk does among those people. And it's really important when we think about the census that we're in the midst of, when we think about the redistricting that's going to happen statewide. It's just an important office. And I think not a lot of people that have been very passionate about it don't mention what they do and what the office does and what it's there for. Having said that, I mean, I can't vote for Heather. I think she's a nice person. Comes from a medical background, a nurse. They have great family pictures, and I say that sincerely. It's like, all right, that's why I say nice person. But just those actions and being part of that establishment and that machine and my turn. And I just think that anti-democratic culture, which, I say culture because it's typical here in the county. There's been at a county commission seat, some last day of the deadline filing. I know in Pittsfield Township, about 4 or 5 people did a switcheroo in 2012. I've heard Brenda Stumbo talk about watching to see who's going to come to the office next day. And, I know when her opponent filed on the last day, Brenda was there to watch and see. So that township culture, that local culture around politics with this void in media, I was surprised at the attention because, it happens, and that doesn't excuse it. It just shows what's so wrong, what's fundamentally wrong with local politics in the township. And I mentioned, I joke with you about being an outsider, and the jest comes from, there's been a lot of it, not you, because you've always been concerned with what's going on in Ypsi Township and talk, but I've just seen a lot of other people come out and they're jumping on this, and I'm like, we have COVID going on right now, and it showed out of all the zip codes, all the areas in the county, they hit most hard, or really having the most detrimental effect in zip codes 48198, 48197, what makes up Ypsi Township. And the COVID's direct effect, the health inequities you mentioned before, we lived average of 10 years less on this part of the area. There's going to be COVID money publicly and in the nonprofit realm. Those dollars need to be focused in the areas most hit. And where our current township government operates, they don't even speak to those issues. No one even knows who they are. And I'm not, generalizing too much. The average person doesn't even know they reside in Ypsi Township or who Brenda Stumbo is, or those that board of trustees. And that's been the traditional leadership, to lay low in the township, do what's in the interest of homeowners and property values, and let the county deal with the rest. It was tenable when we had two factories here. Those started leaving 27 years ago. Just one with the Ypsi Township, 30% poverty rate in the city of Ypsilanti and 30% poverty rate. Ypsi Township, heard numbers between 14, 15%, maybe 16. But with that 30% in the city, 30% in Ypsi City, that represents about 6,000 people. But 15% poverty rate in Ypsi Township, like 8,000 or 9,000 people. And those 8,000 or 9,000 people are the ones that are just left out in the lurch from that void in township leadership. And that's why we don't have those health inequities addressed. We don't have real law enforcement discussion, and why nobody knows where that they live at Ypsi Township. So that's why I'm excited about Cheryl Roberts. I'm excited about Justin because I know he cares and can speak to that. Denise would too if she got in. Monica, I know that she definitely cares and has been engaged, and I feel like the clerk's office did a disservice to her because she filed early, and it's the clerk's office responsibility to make sure her paperwork was in order, and it doesn't seem like they fulfilled it and left her out on the lurch for a long period of time. So I just really wish, I say that all the time about Ypsi Township. I mean, Ann Arbor is around 120,000, number one population-wise. Ypsi Township's number two, that big void with 55,000 people, and democracy is about people, not property value. If you add up the populations of Dexter, Milan, and Saline, and Chelsea, it's like it's a little under 30,000, and we have 55,000 in Ypsi Township. But those other municipalities, because it's higher land value, more white, vote more, that dominate the discussion at that board of commissioners and in the decision-making circle. But everyone's talking about equity now, so we really need to find out where these equity issues play out. I mentioned Augusta Township earlier. Superior Township gets really left out big time, Ann Arbor, listen, pay attention. County-wide, these outer areas, Ypsi Township, Augusta Township, Superior, Northfield also. A lot of very big misperception that Whitmore Lake is in Northfield Township. Many people feel as if that's a more affluent part of the area, and it isn't. Our health department, there's great data there. People can look. It's a low health opportunity area. Not over 90% white, and it doesn't fit the typical narratives that we're fed. But that's what you and I believe. Stretching across the aisle, all races, creeds, color, everybody, all citizens together, the working class, vulnerable populations coalescing, speaking with one voice.
So those are some good ones. I just want to say that What's Left actually has an article that was released earlier this week, written A Vote of No Confidence following the Ypsilanti Township clerk race. So you can find more information about that on What's Left, to see a timeline of what happened. So it looks like we're moving on now to our Congress seat, our District 12, Dingle and Rajput. You start off. I've already said a lot. Maybe
you I hope I can make a decision here. I mean, I love Solomon's politics and platform. I had him as a guest on my show. Off camera, I asked him something about Ypsi, and he said, or maybe it was on camera, said he liked the food. And I didn't think he was really that knowledgeable about this area, and it made me question his sincerity. But I mean, that platform, so that but it was hearing from other people that hearing that he's not doing this, not doing that. And I'm just wondering, 'cause, I didn't know. I guess you said you didn't in the very beginning, but of course you loved his platform. Is there anything that can that really caused you concern that made you go the other way? That you'd be willing, not putting you on the spot. But that's what we're here for. Can you help
I was like,
people?
yes, you are.
To
You
me,
actually
I'm wondering too.
So yeah,
What?
I'll say a couple of things. I've met with Solomon many times, and I've actually introduced him to you, and so and other folks. So um, but I will say a couple of things that really kind of turned for me. One, as I mentioned, the Progressive Caucus, which does endorsements statewide, both candidates applied for an endorsement or apply for an endorsement put in, and I'm not part of the endorsement committee. All of the reps, we read them, we vote on them, but I'm not part of the committee. But the committee does read, all of the endorsement letters that come in and put something out about them for us all to look at. And it was disappointing to me that we have two candidates and that we weren't endorsing one. But looking at the applications, I couldn't I could not um, I could not make a case for why we should go. I would push against the committee. So that to me, that was one spot is that piece of concern because this is people looking, who are leading progressive work around the state. And if they weren't believing in our candidate, then I was like, so that was that was a piece of concern for me. Another piece of concern for me so I watched the debate that the county Dems hosted, and there was a question. So this is a hang up question. This is a question that's part of our endorsement materials, and I've been I don't know I feel like a broken record on it. But when questions are asked about reparations, it just makes my little go up,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just continually disappointed. And so his answer on reparations his
What
answer
you
on
do?
his answer on reparations was really disappointing. He, it's the kind of thing where it's like, like just good social programs will help us, and I understand. And I mean, yes, we need more. We can point out like the areas where we need more equitable funding, and that if we improve the conditions in these spaces, that uh, African Americans, other Black folks, other people of colors, that their life, like things will improve. Yes, I agree with that. That's something that we need to be doing anyway. But for me, around like a cash payment, I feel like people acting as if that's like, you know, uh, the thing. It's kind of like even if I just wanted that money just to go on a vacation, it shouldn't matter. I don't want anybody saying what I should do with that money. Didn't nobody say anything what to do with the money they made off of my ancestors' backs. So nobody has said anything about how much money is still circulating in this country because of that, right? How that has set up, how our treasury was set up based on that, right? So for me, I'm just like at this point, I'm like it's 2020. I don't want to hear, people. It's like, yeah, study, whatever, whatever, figure it out. Uh, if reparations is not about a cash check into my pocket, then that's a problem to me. Not because it's a problem to me because that should be the easy thing. The hard work is the systems work. The easy thing is putting money in my pocket, and so I feel like that should be the easy thing, and we should get out of the idea that that systems does not mean one-time payment. One-time payment is a start, and everything else is what we need to do, just because that's what we need to do. So anyway, that's. I mean, I know like that's a lot, and there's some learning people can learn. I don't think, but that was something that was disappointing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And Debbie Dingle is part of the House committee that's into that study, so she's a co-sponsor of that. And so, not that that's enough, but again, that's already in a better spot. Healthcare for all, which is a big progressive issue. Debbie Dingell is one of the co-sponsors for the Healthcare for All bill, and worked with Bernie Sanders on that. And so, so that's they have similar spacing in there. Um, and like I said, I agree with the idea that as a district, and we really deserve to have real progressive leadership, and that we should be leading that charge. We should be having folks that are going to be going into Congress and pushing the dial. Michigan is, as a purple state, uh, so many things about our demographics here. We should be having folks in Congress really pushing the buttons. And so I want that. I just don't know that I think that Solomon is that person.
Mm. You know, I think if it were today, I'd probably be voting for Dingell. The reservation, though, is, just the status quo. It's so hard. And seeing how it plays out locally, like one of the issues that was really personal to me, in the site of the former Willow Run bomber plant, there were two automobile factories after. They closed in 93 and 2010, respectively. It was dormant for a period. And then what happened was a nonprofit called the American Center for Mobility, which it was built as this great solution that's going to, if not, not a solution, but it was going to really have significant economic impact in this area and a great use for the land. And there was a big opening at the Eagle Crest, an announcement, and I saw Debbie Dingell give the speech, and Brenda Stumbo and the CEO, and none of that stuff materialized. And I just feel like it was BS then. I didn't have a big expectation of real structural change and a big turnaround, but to see it confirmed and seeing politicians like Debbie Dingell go and make those speeches because that's what you need to do and part of the system. So. That's the disappointing part. I guess I would lean, though, still having said all that, is because like in a microcosm, I haven't seen Solomon Rajput in these areas, working. Previous to running or even as running, I haven't seen a lot of those people, grassroots people, just those concerns you listed about, the Progressive Party and progressives in the party. So that's not a ringing endorsement, but most likely Dingell.
I want to say, just just to be clear, I mean, I often vote for people that I don't particularly like.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like as in a personal way, but people who I'm not enthusiastic about or things of that sort, and so that does happen, unfortunately. But I think too that part of it for me is that in this kind of case, I know that me voting for Debbie Dingell is actually me committing to continuing to push her for what I want to see, and demanding things like, okay, Debbie Dingell, so you have this letter to HUD about what's happening at Sycamore Meadows. What's that follow through? I don't want to hear about, oh, we did another walkthrough and it's okay. I want to hear that we have actually taken on and decided that public housing, housing is a human right, and public housing is what we need. And so we need to change the way we think about public housing, which means that public housing should be the best housing we have on the market.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case. So what are we doing? So it's things like that where it's like, how do we actually push? Same with climate change with Debbie Dingell. I know I was out in front of her office with Sunrise pushing for the Green New Deal, which she still will not endorse, support, sign on to. She hangs on to the endorsements that she has from other environmental organizations, and is focused on this, electric vehicles by 2035, and that's great and all, but that's not enough. We need to keep pushing. We need more, and I kind of am like, Debbie Dingo, the leader that you are, I would like to see you getting into that Green New Deal and working out some kinks and putting in some actual policy there, as opposed to saying, oh, it doesn't have that. When you have the kind of connections and legacy that you have, that's the kind of leadership we need in spaces that are being led by young people and new people in Congress. So that to me is a roll up your sleeves kind of moment. And so those are the kind of things that I want to keep pushing her on and see her put that all that good relationships that she has to work for people, for the people of this county that we should be demanding more. We should be demanding more than speeches, right? It's great that she does show up. I think that is, also important, but we also cannot rest on that.
Yeah, she was at the West Willow picnic for about 10 minutes a couple of years ago. But in all seriousness, though, that you make me think that, voting for someone, gives you more of a platform, at least, hey, I voted for you. I supported you. So that's something that might make me feel a bit more better about that dingle vote if I do. Which again, if it was today, I would call that endorsement if you want. But to your point, holding them accountable and engaging, after that vote.
So I know we're kind of. Oh, I was just gonna say I know we're at 7:30 now, and I just maybe we could just do a couple of closing things. I think it's so interesting, kind of going through this and kind of being like, this is who I'm voting for, and a lot of people kind of hold those things close in some ways. But for me, voting is a collective activity. We need to be doing more of it because it's about numbers, and we don't have them.
Absolutely.
We don't have enough of us voting, even in this county. We don't have enough people who look like you and I voting in this county. We don't have enough people who are low income voting. We don't have enough renters voting. We don't have. So we need to be building numbers if we want to actually push the change, but then also being able to have better candidates as well. And so we need to be creating better circumstances and places for people to be running as well. And so I think all of these things are intertwined. And I also just want to say that there's so many resources for folks in terms of finding out, how to vote, where to vote, the process, how to register, but then also just some information. I just want to give a shout out to Ypsi Can I Share, which is another group that I'm also a part of, and that put together, these videos of candidates. In a 48198, 48197 zip codes. And so that's Pittsfield Township, Superior Township, Ypsi Township, and the city of Ypsilanti. And I think that that's another great way. We ask really specific questions. But for folks who might be still questioning, I would say take a look there, and also to take a look at the candidates who aren't, who we have who aren't running, just to get to know who they are, right? And what those races, what those offices do.
I think you said it all, and I don't want to just to extend things. And just thank you for doing this with me. Encourage everyone to vote. Please get involved. I will say, I felt like I was much more educated this time around than, I've been back in this area for 4 years. In 2018, I felt like, wow, I'm so behind. I feel like I'm more educated this time, but there's so much more to learn. And I think preparing for the next election, it's not too early. What you were saying about Debbie Dingo, locally, getting engaged. I mean, the new people, so we can really punch harder the next time around. It's about engaging with these issues, being as educated, try to affect them positively, and then the next election we have some more real powerful people to run. So that's it for me.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you all for listening, watching us. I hope that some of these comments are helpful to you as you make your decisions. Yeah, I guess we'll see you next time. Also, I just want to note too, just to be clear, the primary will decide who's our county prosecutor. That's one of the races that will be decided by this primary. So you can't wait till November to make a choice there.
It's so important. It's so important. That could really dramatically change criminal justice in Washington County, and that's not an overstatement.
So thank you all. Until next time, signing off. This is Desirae.
Thank you. Bye, Desirae.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.